for a long time and don't like knowing the ending before it even starts.
Speaking of those polls, President-elect Trump now attacking again rigged polls.
Let's keep our eye on here because the door's just open.
I'll
A very exciting moment indeed. A busy schedule for the president-elect will begin tomorrow morning, 8:30 a.m. There will be a private prayer service held at St. John's Episcopal Church. The president-elect and his family will attend that religious service, but he is gearing up for what is going to be a very exciting next 24 hours. Of course, he will be sworn in at noon tomorrow. This plane took off. This is a military plane carrying the president-elect and his family. Took off from LaGuardia Airport just a short time ago in the 11 o'clock Eastern Time hour. It is now landed in Washington at Joint Base Andrews, and we are watching for the president-elect to emerge any moment.
There's Barron, right?
Spokesman Sean Spicer indicating this morning that the president will give a philosophical speech.
So right away you saw Barron exit the plane. Donald Trump Jr. has exited the plane with some of his children. Of course, he's got 5 children. There's his wife as well. Eric Trump seems to be following directly behind with his wife, Laura. And there appears to be Ivanka Trump with her youngest baby that she had just last year in 2016. Of course, Jared Kushner, her husband, following directly behind. There is Tiffany, Donald Trump's youngest of his 4 children, and more continue to emerge.
Is that Barry Trump, his sister, who sits on, I believe, the 3rd Circuit Court of Appeals, and is a federal judge and very well respected? I think that's who that is.
And of course, we are waiting for the president-elect, Donald J. Trump, to emerge himself. But what a moment, 12:16 p.m. Eastern Time, and he has arrived just ahead of the big day, Inauguration Day, taking place tomorrow.
You know, for all the buildup, as I watch the plane, United States of America, and he's about to come out, it really does sink in a way that it hasn't so far, that we're about to have a new president, unlike any president.
As I sit next to Julie Reginsky, a staunch Democrat, did you ever see the day?
You know, it's not, well, for me, I did not have this reaction, I must admit, when George Bush became president. I certainly would not have had it, I believe, if John McCain had become president or Mitt Romney. This is something very different for me, not just because of my political affiliation, but I think because of the individual who's about to take office.
If you're just tuning in, we are waiting for the president-elect to emerge from that military plane. It has just landed in Washington. Ahead of tomorrow's inauguration, his family has already exited the plane. We have not yet seen the president-elect.
This is a pause for dramatic effect. Every showman knows how to do.
Is this Melania?
Ooh,
this is Melania.
our new First Lady.
The soon-to-be First Lady, and there he is. President-elect Donald J. Trump has arrived in Washington. Just one day ahead of its inauguration, you are looking at the soon-to-be 45th president of the United States. I mean, who just said it?
I was 22 or 23 when Obama was elected, and it sounds naive, but I never thought it would end. I thought I would have to deal with Obama forever. And anyone other than Obama exiting that plane is a great morning for me right now.
And he is receiving the formal military salute as he lands and walks down the stairs and arrives in Washington alongside his wife, Melania. And such a busy schedule will get underway. The first festivities begin tomorrow morning at 8:30 a.m. Eastern Time.
A lot of people will be watching the tone of the inaugural speech. Sean Spicer saying it'll be a more philosophical speech rather than an agenda-driven speech, because Donald Trump has had such a contentious transition, and that's by design. He is somebody who won the nomination, won the election by fighting and by fighting back. And so a lot of Americans will be tuning in, of course, to see what he has to say to the nation at noon tomorrow.
Well, you know, and it was an amazing sight just over an hour ago when he left New York City. People were lining the streets in Midtown Manhattan just to see him drive off to LaGuardia Airport.
And New Yorkers don't usually do that for anybody.
No, it's true.
Some of us are happy to just have 57th Street back, you know.
It's true.
Yeah.
And he is now in the vehicle, and it begins. We've got the countdown clock, as you can see, and that is a countdown clock to his swearing in. That will take place at noon Eastern Time tomorrow. Donald J. Trump has arrived in Washington ahead of the inauguration tomorrow. Yes. Julie, you're oddly silent.
I'm not silent. You know, I'm taking it in. I have to say, this is actually, it's not a joke or said for effect. This is, in some ways, this has made it much more real for me I don't know about the rest of you, but again, not from a partisan perspective, but to see Donald Trump, who most of us had known in a very different capacity than as a senator or a congressman, an elected official, to emerge out of a plane that says United States of America on it, I think just made it that much more real visually, if a picture speaks 1,000 words or whatever other cliche it could come
And all
up with.
this while his transition process.
Yeah.
Some say it's going quite well. His camp says that, but there has been some scrutiny, and obviously hearings taking place on Capitol Hill today. Steve Mnuchin, the nominee he has chosen for Treasury Secretary, he's being grilled.
Yeah.
But all of this as that process continues.
It does, and Democrats are fighting tooth and nail, probably setting the tone for what things are going to be like going forward, which makes sense. I mean, that's what they feel like they're going to have to do. It's different than what we saw in '08. You know, there were many more confirmations at this point in time, but that's sort of the tone that we might see going forward. I would say, obviously, policy and America and all those other things come first. And on a completely frivolous note, as we sit here, it was fun to watch Michelle Obama's fashion through the past 8 years. I mean, she had a lot of style. It's going to be interesting to see Melania's style. That coat, very sharp and fantastic. You know, can we say that?
Yeah, can I actually just say this to my fellow liberals out there? I think some of the opprobrium that Michelle Obama got over the last 8 years from some people was uncalled for. And I hope my side leaves Melania Trump alone and doesn't do that to her, because I think Melania Trump did not ask for this. Certainly does not seem that she's craving it. I think would prefer to stay in New York if all else were equal. And whatever else happens with her husband, I really hope that we cut her a break and don't make her into some sort of meme that I think Michelle Obama was for the right, including some of the lovely tweets that I get every day about Michelle Obama that are very uncalled for.
Well, not only...
Can I curtail on that? I hope people let the Obama daughters be teenagers. There's already some things that have happened on the internet in the past year and a half, which I have completely come to Sasha and Malia's defense. They're going to make mistakes. This is the era of the cameras on every phone, cameras everywhere. They're young women, and I hope the media continues to go easy on their children as well.
Well, you know, I mean, that's one of the things about the internet. Every news organization that I've worked for, I have been told, you know, that the families, the wives and the children, the first spouse and the children are off limits. That these are not people that volunteered for this job, and you cannot, you know, make fun of them, be mean, any of that sort of thing. But obviously, in the age of the internet, people are going to say a lot of mean things, and not every organization operates by those principles.
About to go to college, they're young girls. I feel for them. People are ruthless.
All right, well, 24 hours ahead of thousands of people expected to fill the National Mall. Donald Trump, the president-elect, has landed in Washington after taking off from New York City just a short time ago. We saw his entire family come off of that plane, pretty much, children, grandchildren, and he was the last to come off with the First Lady, the soon-to-be First Lady, Melania Trump. And the festivities will shortly begin.
I'm sorry, but could you just imagine being Melania Trump from Slovenia, an immigrant who came here not as a child like I did, but as basically as an adult, and the transformation to go from basically being somebody who came here without any support or any family to now be the First Lady of the United States. That must be an amazing, amazing feeling.
Only our second foreign-born First Lady, and of course she's remaining for at least for a few months back in Trump Tower. I think this president, you know, most politicians, the White House is the nicest place they'll ever live. This president will also be spending a lot of time back here in New York at Trump Tower and at Mar-a-Lago.
And Howie, I know this is something that you report on and have been following a lot. But the president-elect has different plans for this inauguration. He's going to be attending less balls, say, than it was compared to Bill Clinton, who attended very many.
14.
The president-elect, he says he's going to be attending 3 balls. The parade, some presidents have had hours-long, 4-hour-long parades. His is intended to be 90 minutes. He plans to get right to work.
Well, Donald Trump has consulted with the former reality show producer Mark Barnett on how to produce this show, and it is a show made for television, and so I think it is more of a stripped-down inauguration, a little less of the festivities, and at the same time, you know, a lot of celebrities have gotten a lot of ink by saying they're not going to go and entertain there, but that's part of the culture war that seems to surround the incoming 45th president.
Yeah, day one, he said, I mean, my day one is going to be Monday because I don't want to be signing and get it mixed up with lots of celebration, says the president-elect. And here you go. There's reality TV for you. We have got cameras following the motorcade that has just left that military plane. that transported the president-elect and his entire family, as we saw, Donald Trump Jr., Eric, Ivanka, Tiffany, his youngest, the First Lady, the incoming First Lady, was aboard that plane. Grandchildren, you saw Donald Trump Jr.'s grandchildren get off the plane. They have arrived. The Trumps have arrived.
Isn't it interesting that one of the things that was out there swirling, I mean, you mentioned the reality show producer that they said was going to come out and produce this event, and for a day or two there was all that hoopla about, oh, is he going to take a helicopter, you know, from the Capitol over, and this is serious, you know, it's not about a reality show, it's not, and the media spent a bunch of time spinning about all that stuff, which ended up not being even remotely.
Okay, so something we know about where he is going, there's cameras right now on both sides of 11th Street. Trump is expected to arrive off the Pennsylvania Avenue entrance into the Trump Hotel for the afternoon's luncheon. So that is expected to happen shortly. Police have cleared the front hotel entrance of pedestrians, I should say.
What struck me in watching the family come off that plane is that they had been very much part of this campaign. I mean, Don Jr., Eric, Ivanka, you know, very important advisors to their father, the president-elect, and, of course, Ivanka's husband, real estate developer Jared Kushner, actually going to be taking a job in the administration. And so this, just as the Trump organization, the real estate company, the golf courses, the hotels, was sort of a family affair, to an interesting degree, the presidency is going to be operated that way as well. These are important people in the new president's life.
And even so many young children coming down that stairway, and those are kids that we've seen all along who are going to be at things and be involved. I mean, we have little kids. It makes me a little nervous.
Not everybody on the couch.
I
don't have
in
children.
the sense that I can't always guarantee how mine are going to behave, and that is just to see those kids come down the stairs. That would be the thing I would be thinking about most. How am I going to behave? Oh my goodness.
Yeah, my son would be flipping that staircase.
So the event that he's going to be attending right away will be a leadership luncheon at the Trump International Hotel. So they are en route right now. We'll be following that every step of the way. But President-elect Donald Trump has arrived in Washington 24 hours ahead of his swearing in. We've got more pictures coming up now. As promised, there are cameras on 11th Street there awaiting the president-elect's arrival. Not huge crowds in that camera shot, but we are told that police, and this is in front of the Trump Hotel, police have already cleared the scene awaiting their arrival. So we should see them arrive shortly. And of course, tomorrow, it's unbelievable when you look at the schedule. Inauguration Day, get ready, 8:30 a.m. It begins with prayer, a prayer service at St. John's Episcopal Church. Coffee date at the White House. The swearing-in ceremony, how he begins at 11:30 a.m. and around noon, the oath of office and the inaugural address will take place.
What's so fascinating to me is that Donald Trump won this election by breaking every rule in the book, by flouting all the conventions of politics. Indeed, he'd never been in politics. But now you see him becoming part of this larger American pageantry and tapestry where you have the rituals and the lunch and the ride with the former president to the Capitol and giving the inaugural speech. And it really is a moment for him personally, for the country, as the guy who was the ultimate outsider becomes a powerful insider.
You know, you bring up an excellent point. I can't remember being as interested in an inaugural speech as I am in this one tomorrow, because I think we knew what to expect from whether it was George Bush or Bill Clinton or Barack Obama, but what do you expect from Donald Trump, or what kind of tone is he going to take? Because he is so unpredictable. And you're hoping, or at least I'm hoping, that whatever the tone is, it sets the tone. It's not going to set the tone for his administration, because I think he varies with the wind, but at least will set the tone for the first couple of weeks. And it'll be interesting to see. I'm not sure if he claims he wrote it himself. I don't know if that's the case. Usually they have a lot of help. But whether it does appeal to our better angels, or whether he persists in taking the tone that he has in recent months of I won and you better fall in line, and it'll be interesting to see what he does. You said philosophical. I'm curious to see whether it's a John Locke philosophy or Thomas Hobbes, or a Hobbes philosophy, where life is dark, cruel, and then we die, essentially.
I think it will be similar to the tone that he took at 3 a.m. on the night that he won the presidency, calling for unity and reaching out. Now, when he starts work Monday morning, I mean, it's not that he's not going to be prepared to take on his detractors and his opponents, not just in the Democratic Party, but perhaps in the House GOP as well. But I think for this speech, for this moment, Donald Trump is savvy enough to know that he now needs to project an image of being the president for all Americans.
All right, what a moment. As you just saw on the left-hand side of your screen, we were showing you the soon-to-be First Lady, Melania Trump, alongside the President-elect landing in Washington. That happened just a few moments ago. Now the motorcade is en route to the Trump Hotel in Washington. Police, as you can see, Secret Service have already blocked off the streets there. They are awaiting their arrival. The entire family, as you saw, Donald Trump's 4 oldest children, also his youngest son, Barron, getting off the plane, as well as some of his grandchildren. They are on their way for the festivities to begin. There will be a leadership luncheon taking place in just a short time. But this is such a moment in history. And Melissa, it's amazing when we look back covering Donald Trump from a business perspective for so long. What a moment to see Donald Trump entering the White House.
It's really true. I mean, I remember the day that he announced, and we were in our show meeting for my show, and we were talking about our rundown, and we said, well, Donald Trump's going to come out at some point. He's going to announce he's not running, so we'll get a soundbite from that and we'll use it later on. And he came out and he said he was running, and we're like, oh, that's interesting. But as he started talking, the whole thing sort of gathered steam, and he kept talking, and you realized that he was dead serious about this, and that it wasn't, as before we always thought of it as kind of a publicity thing, where he talked about being in politics because it was a great way to kind of get airtime and promote his other businesses, but underneath it all, he was about his shows and marketing. And I never really had the sense that he was that serious about politics. Then he came out and he said this, and he said he was running, and we kind of stood around the newsroom and looked at each other, and here we are now. I mean, it's just interesting in that time that's gone by to remember that date specifically.
And as we let off the show with these now 68 House Democrats that say they will not be attending the inaugural ceremonies, Julie, you want this to be a moment where we all come together and unite. And unfortunately, that is the headline, is that these Democrats will be sitting this one out.
Yeah, well, I don't know if that's the headline. I think the headline will be President Trump takes office. But I think it is a missed opportunity. And again, Melissa mentioned him coming down the escalator. I laughed it off and thought it was a joke. I remember saying to people, yeah, okay, wait until they ask him to release his taxes. He'll never do that. Well, he didn't, and he still got elected. I mean, every step of the way, including this very moment when I saw the United States of America on the side of a plane with a reality show star touching down, is surreal to me. But having said that, he is now about to become the President of the United States. And partisan politics aside, that office is larger than partisan politics, and he's the leader of our republic. And so we owe it to him tomorrow on his inauguration day for members of Congress on both sides of the aisle to show up, to send a message to other countries that may not wish us well, that are not democracies, that in fact we are a democracy that supports peaceful transfer of power, and we are a democracy that respects the office of the President of the United States, even if you don't respect the man occupying it. And I think that's a missed opportunity. I think a lot of Democrats have said, well, I don't respect him. His views are illegitimate, therefore he's illegitimate.
And while President Barack Obama said he wouldn't comment on those 68 House Democrats not attending, he said, I'll be there, Michelle will be there, and of course we know that Hillary and Bill Clinton will be there.
Right. And George H.W. Bush, unfortunately, not able to go, and I guess is being hospitalized, but seems to be stabilized. You know, it's a small but symbolic thing. But when I saw the president get out of that plane, I realized the next time we see him board a plane, he'll be giving the salute to the military people on duty there, and that will be a little reminder that he's now in charge of the United States Armed Forces. So, you know, there is all of this weight and the gravity of the office that descends on anyone, no matter how confident, no matter how successful in life, when they become the president. Trump hasn't really shown any great strain, and of course he's still on Twitter attacking people or responding to attacks, which often the press misses. I don't know if he will change that, but you know, in a heartbeat, we will use the president, and we'll be referring to Donald J. Trump, and that will take a little bit of getting used to.
And you just referenced President George H.W. Bush, and of course his wife had been our thoughts and prayers.
Yes.
As their medical conditions have have taken a toll this week. We just got an update on the Bushes. This is the official word. President Bush had a good night's rest and remains in stable condition in the ICU at Houston Methodist Hospital. His medical team is actively evaluating him, and we are hopeful he will be discharged from the ICU in a few days. He was admitted yesterday, as we know, and diagnosed with a case of bronchitis. Mrs. Bush reports she feels, thankfully, 1,000% better this morning. Antibiotics and some good rest seem to have restored her to better health. So they have received a lot of friends have been visiting them, they're reporting, and that is the official release coming from the Bush family.
You know, Howie, I'm glad you mentioned Hillary Clinton, because that's actually a very good data point for why I think these Democrats should show up. Hillary Clinton is showing up tomorrow.
Right.
I mean, my goodness, can you imagine how painful this is going to be for her to be there tomorrow? And yet she's showing up as the former First Lady, and she's standing up there with her husband, the former president. And I think if she can do it, certainly these 60-something Democrats can do it, because she understands, or at least her presence will demonstrate that tomorrow is larger.
And by the way, the case of bronchitis was Mrs. Bush. Right. It was a matter of pneumonia for Mr. Bush. But of course, she's saying she's 1,000% better, so that's very nice to be able to report that today.
One of the things that was on our rundown is what will happen as of tomorrow to former President Barack Obama, and he indicated at his final news conference that when he is moved on an important issue that he's going to speak out. I happen to think that that's entirely appropriate for a former president. George W. Bush was different. He really went back to Texas, took up painting, and decided to stay out of the political spotlight. He had had his 8 years. That was enough. You don't, as a former president, want to be second-guessing your successor every other day. But I think...
In theory.
In theory. And if you do that, you probably pay a political price. But I don't think there's anything wrong with a former president weighing in.
They're not even leaving Washington, though. I mean, they're living down the street from Ivanka, and
But that's because of their daughter finishing high school.
They're still not leaving D.C. I don't know. I feel like...
You want him gone.
I think that he will start criticizing President Trump within a few weeks. I think he can't control himself. I think this has always been sort of, because he was so contentious during the election that, Donald Trump is a lot more famous than President Obama is. He sort of beat him at his own game, turning the White House into a celebrity contest. It all started with President Obama, and I think he will be bitter and critical and all over television and the exact polar opposite of the graciousness that George W. Bush showed President Obama.
Can I just say, in the New York Times, having a little bit of fun with this, I don't know if they realized they did this or not. You would hope they did. They said in farewell, Obama sets red lines that would pull him back in. So when he would make a comment.
Where does that phrase? It's very familiar.
I know, the red line in Syria. Well, yeah, so I don't know if the New York Times was having a little bit of fun with that headline, but they're saying that he made it clear on Wednesday that he finds some ideas advanced by President-elect Donald J. Trump so alarming, he laid out markers that would draw him back into the fray. I don't know if his markers in the past that he's laid down have not drawn him back in when he said he would come back in, but I have a sense that this time it will.
A lot of Republicans and conservatives that have had a very contentious and, extremely draining last 8 years watching what our country has become, especially in regards to what President Obama did, completely weakening our country in every single aspect in regards to foreign policy. It is a welcome relief to see him leave. I mean, I truly believe he has made America less safe in every conceivable way. So I have high hopes that Donald Trump will actually take the rise of ISIS seriously, will actually take the refugee crisis in Syria seriously, and he's surrounding himself with people like Mad Dog Mattis, who people like me, the ultimate respect for. So listen, there's definitely a new sheriff in town.
All right, we are going to, and he is in town. He has arrived in Washington, and we have cameras, as you can see, on the right-hand side of your screen, or there it is, in front of the Trump hotel there. We are going to be watching this, awaiting Donald Trump's arrival. He is with his family. They just landed, and we will bring that to you when it happens. By the way, Trump started out this day by tweeting, "The journey begins. I will be working and fighting very hard to make it a great journey for the American people." And so it begins. All right, we're going to move on, but we'll keep this. Let's see, this is not particularly his vehicle yet, but we will keep watching this for you. and let you know when he arrives. Meantime, on Capitol Hill, Treasury Secretary nominee Steven Mnuchin is on the hot seat, and he has been for a couple hours now. Democrats grilling the former banker on his record involving foreclosures and his private investments. Meantime, Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer says he's only ready to give clearance tomorrow to confirm General John Kelly and James Mattis for their posts and to debate Mike Pompeo's confirmation. This after the Democrat raised concerns about most of President-elect Trump's cabinet picks and the way their confirmation hearings are being handled.
This is a swamp cabinet full of bankers and billionaires. It's no surprise Republicans are trying to rush through these hearings. They don't want people to know the true views of their nominees, the potential conflicts of interest, and just how many of them come from the top 1% and are even billionaires. President Obama's nominees all had their paperwork in a timely way, and the Republicans were given ample time to question the witnesses, so it's not analogous at all.
Incoming White House Press Secretary Sean Spicer hitting back today.
I think what's a shame right now is to see some of those individuals who we would call consensus candidates, people who they didn't even find a problem with, people like Secretary Elaine Chao, Ben Carson, Nikki Haley, suddenly not be part of Senator Schumer's list that he will work with us to get done on day one. It's disappointing. These were people that are highly qualified, that were considered quote-unquote consensus candidates prior to a few weeks ago. This was not the precedent that was set by Senate Republicans when they worked with the Obama administration in 2008.
All right, Howie Kurtz.
Well, what we're seeing here is a little bit of foot dragging on the part of the Democrats, and this is payback in part for Mitch McConnell and Republicans not even giving President Obama's Supreme Court nominee Merrick Garland a hearing. Sean Spicer's right. Some of these nominees are very uncontroversial and would pass, but there are some legitimate concerns. Steve Mnuchin, for example, a Treasury nominee, had not initially disclosed $95 million of his assets. The OMB pick has a nanny problem, didn't pay taxes. Tom Price, the congressman and HHS nominee, controversy about him being involved in buying some health stocks and introducing legislation. So those would come up in any event.
All right, you're noticing some movement on the camera because we are being told that he is arriving, or at least his arrival is imminent. There in Washington. He's going to be arriving at his hotel, the Trump Hotel in Washington. We've got cameras all over the place for you, both sides of the street, because the motorcade just departed the airport there after leaving New York City just a few minutes ago. I mean, it doesn't take long to get there. But we are awaiting his arrival, and we are waiting to see the entire soon-to-be first family to arrive in Washington, Melissa.
In fact, they're going to the Trump Hotel, and that was something that Sean Spicer was asked about during that press conference before, and he said, shouldn't be a shocker. I think it's pretty smart. The idea of going to his own hotel shouldn't be a shocker. He's very proud. It's a stunning hotel. I don't think that President-elect Trump having a reception at the hotel should be a shock to anyone there. They were trying to make something out of the fact that that's where he's going.
And people are lining the streets, we are told. You can't exactly see that in the shot there. But we are, well, of course, Secret Service and the police have to clear certain areas for the motorcade to get through. But this is what we're hearing from our producers on the ground.
I know that block very well, 11th and Pennsylvania. It was the old post office building, historic, with a big clock tower. Donald Trump bought it or is leasing it from the government, restored it to this Trump Hotel. And I think maybe it's time to move away from the notion that any time Donald Trump goes to any property of his that he's just engaging in branding. He's about to be president. He probably has some
Howie,
important
but you have to concede that after tomorrow, once he takes the oath of office at noon tomorrow, January 20th, his ownership of that particular hotel becomes a massive potential legal problem for him because of the emoluments clause.
Why?
Because of the emoluments clause, and not just because of that, but because of the fact that that lease specifically says very clearly that nobody owning that hotel can have any federal job whatsoever. He's the President of the United States, and that particular property, not any other property, but that particular property is by ethics lawyers from both the Clinton, Obama, and Bush administrations all concede that that is a massive problem.
All right.
He should move away from that hotel.
So he has brought as we saw in that press conference last week, he brought a lawyer up to the podium to explain exactly how he intends to not have any conflict of interest. But that being said, I want to keep the spotlight on this moment because we are waiting the first family. Inauguration activities are going to begin right away for the family. Donald Trump will be attending a leadership luncheon with transition officials and incoming staff at his Washington hotel Hotel, as we're discussing. He'll also be attending a wreath-laying ceremony at Arlington National Cemetery and making an appearance at a concert at the Lincoln Memorial, I was seeing. That's going to be a big day, all ahead of all the festivities that begin early tomorrow morning. Megyn McCain, your thoughts as we watch the arrival of the president-elect?
It's just nice to see a Republican win, honestly. I didn't think I'd see it in my adult lifetime. I've been through a lot of losses, spent a lot of election nights on, different intervals as well, crying, and I'm just so happy that people like Mad Dog Mattis are going to be in power. Again, I'm a foreign policy girl, meat and potatoes foreign policy girl, and anything that is not letting out Gitmo terrorists, giving clemency to traitors who release all our international secrets, anything that is not Obama, for me, is a welcome change. I'm just glad it is the House, Congress, Senate, presidency. I'm just glad to see real change finally come to Washington.
But Megyn, you can't possibly agree with this guy's foreign policy on Russia and issues of that ilk. I mean, you can't, and I know you don't. So
anything, but you know what? But Putin gained strength and power, and the Syrian refugee crisis raged out of control under Obama. And I'm hoping with Nikki Haley, what I saw yesterday during her hearing, and with people like Mad Dog Mattis surrounding him, and quite frankly, people like him listening to people like my father, which he's been calling him. I hope he sees the writing on the wall in regards to Putin.
Here's perhaps
anything that isn't Obama. Anything except the past 8 years will be anything except that will be a welcome change.
Here's a better look at the people that are lining the streets. How you said you know the area very well, but as we said, we've got cameras on both sides of 11th Street there, awaiting the motorcade in front of Trump Hotel in Washington, D.C.
That's a stretch of Pennsylvania Avenue that sits between the White House and the Capitol. And when all the geniuses in the media said, well, Donald Trump, of course, was going to lose, and here are the color-coded maps to prove it, the joke used to be, well, the closest that he will get will be his own hotel when he wants to stay in Washington. Well, now I think he's going to be 5 blocks away at the People's Mansion in the White House.
And as
he's not a Trump Tower.
As you mentioned, and I know, Julie, you said you're going to be highly anticipating his inauguration speech, which he has been preparing, as he's taken pictures of himself even practicing it using the prompter. He's tweeted about it. Sean Spicer, as you mentioned earlier, Melissa, said the speech will be a vision of where he sees the country. It's going to be a very personal and sincere statement about his vision for the country. I think it's going to be, this is Sean Spicer, be less of an agenda and more of a philosophical document.
Yeah.
The proper role of government, the role of citizens.
And I don't want to get away from, in this moment, as we talk about, you say anything but Obama and the changeover and everybody's emotions as they watch this, that there are people in other parts of the world that watch this and view it as nothing short of a miracle. I heard other people talking about that earlier this morning, that this peaceful transition of power, I mean, we should take a break from the partisan nature of politics for a moment to appreciate the idea that, when you see President Obama and President-elect Trump together, that they are two people who don't share a lot of common ground in terms of where their politics are, and that this is what our country is all about, and where we came from, and why we vote, and why we come together as a nation is because you can see the transfer of power between two groups that don't agree on a whole lot, except for the fact that, every citizen has the right to vote for the government that they want.
And the soon-to-be first family is arriving. There's the motorcade pulling up. Just arrived in Washington, pulling up in front of the Trump Hotel there ahead of a luncheon that will be taking place. And it's a big motorcade because, as we know, Donald Trump just arrived with his entire family.
Everything's
his 5 children, his grandchildren, his wife Melania.
It's huge, Howie.
It's
Come on, you're from Brooklyn. It's huge.
Journalists tend to put people in boxes, left, right, Republican, Democrat.
Yeah.
There are a lot of people who voted for Barack Obama for change in 2008 who voted for Donald Trump in 2016. That's hard for some pundits to understand, but they felt that they didn't get the change, they didn't see the changes in their lives that they wanted under the last 8 years, and now some of them, of course, some of them did not, but some of them are hoping that Donald Trump can deliver on particularly the economic promises, the promises about jobs and infrastructure that he made during the campaign. And they say, well, he was a successful businessman, and therefore he must know what he was doing. I think that was underestimated as an attribute or a selling point for this new president.
And we've got the countdown clock going until the official swearing in. I believe that's Tiffany Trump getting out of the car right now. His fourth child recently graduated from college. And as I mentioned, there's a lot of Trumps there. So we're going to keep watching the doors to open and especially watching for the president-elect and the soon-to-be First Lady to emerge, Melania Trump. Secret Service and police, of course, are all over the place. They've been blocking these streets there from pedestrians awaiting this motorcade. But all eyes are on Donald J. Trump, who has just arrived in Washington 24 hours ahead of his swearing in at nearly the noon hour Eastern time tomorrow. What a day.
I am so looking forward to going back to Washington and fighting with the traffic. And
Said no one ever.
And of course, that swearing in, as we do a watch for more family members to emerge, will be done by Chief Justice John Roberts using, as we mentioned, the two Bibles, his childhood Bible, which was given to him by his mother in 1955, as well as the Lincoln Bible, which was also used by President Barack Obama for his two inaugurations.
Remember when Donald Trump clinched the nomination and talked about what he would be like and if he won the general election, and he said, "I will be so presidential you will be bored." I don't think that has happened. I don't think there's anything about this president that has been boring, the way he's conducted the transition, the way he uses Twitter as a method of communicating with millions of people going around the media. One thing I can safely predict for the next 4 years, and I'll make a lot of predictions, this is not going to be a boring time in our nation's capital.
No, absolutely not. You know, it's funny, I was driving with a cab driver recently, and everybody has their anecdote story about, you know, what they've heard regular people say about Donald Trump.
Cab driver focus group.
Right, yeah, exactly, the cab driver focus group. And he said to me, "I'm not legal in this country, but if I was, I would vote for Donald Trump," which begged so many obvious questions.
Yeah.
And the one I started with was why. And he said, well, he understands business and money, and we really need to get the economy going again. People I know just don't have a lot of business, and they're not making any money, and their families are suffering, and he goes, I believe he can do that.
No, I thought he was going to win when, no offense to that cab driver, but I knew he was probably going to win when girlfriends of mine who I went to college with were considering voting for him. We talked about it the day before the election, the unknown Ivanka Trump voter, the college-educated woman of a certain socioeconomic class who were considering voting for Trump quietly because they didn't want to be, you know, embarrassed or hear any criticism from other people, who all quietly voted for Donald Trump. And then it happened. The women that were supposed to come out in droves for Hillary Clinton pulled the trigger for Trump.
We're also waiting to see the Vice President-elect, Mike Pence, to arrive at the hotel there. He will also be attending the leadership luncheon. Our Chief White House correspondent, John Roberts, said that Pence has left to join Trump for lunch. The motorcade, his motorcade, just left en route to the Trump hotel. So he will be joining the president-elect there as well.
Melissa, you understand business as we continue to look at these pictures outside the Trump Hotel on Pennsylvania Avenue. How is it that there is so much economic anxiety and frustration and even anger in the country, and yet at the same time, unemployment is about 4.7%. The stock market is near 20,000, and Barack Obama, despite the change of election, is walking out the door with a 60% approval rating.
The last part is about him as a person and people finding him charming. In terms of the unemployment rate, and the disparity, I mean, it can very easily be explained in the way median income has fallen and the gap between rich and poor has gotten bigger. I mean, as the stock market has accelerated, that has helped some, and they have gained wealth, but those in the middle have seen wages fall. I mean, nominal wages have fallen while Barack Obama has been in office, and that means what you're getting paid versus inflation and how those dollars that you get paid buy less. People feel like they're imagining that. No, that's real. You are falling behind in terms of what your paycheck can do for you, and people know that, and as they've been told, hey, look, the unemployment rate has gone way down. They know that the jobs that they had before and the job they have now isn't as good and doesn't pay as well. Manufacturing jobs have gone away, and it's going to be the challenge for Donald Trump. I mean, he's already bringing jobs back, and a lot of people are taking shots at that, saying those aren't real jobs, those are jobs that were coming back anyway. He has to create an environment that makes businesses want to have their factories here. He does that with lower taxes, with cheap energy, with less regulation. He knows how to do it because he's been on the other side of that equation. He's been fighting those battles as a CEO. go. In the business community, people talk about a president who's willing to engage as opposed to a president who saw them as enemy. I know from bank CEOs, they felt like President Obama saw them as the enemy, even though they were Democrats and they agreed with him on so many things.
Even many Democrats now saying that Hillary Clinton sort of failed to target the millions of working class Americans who feel those frustrations, whose wages aren't going as far, and that's why she lost states like Michigan and Wisconsin, and that was the ballgame.
Can I ask Julie a question? Do you regret not having Bernie as the nominee?
No, I don't. I regret a great many things. I don't know that Bernie would have been able to do it. I don't know.
Biden?
Biden was my guy from day one. I think Joe Biden could have communicated it. Yeah, I mean, listen, I was, as I said, I kept joking during the campaign in the land of the blind.